the floor. So for those that don't know, we have a Roman Catholic who attends the Byzantine rite, and he is going to make his arguments. So go ahead.
Okay, so just a brief introduction. So you guys already know I'm a Byzantine Catholic. I don't actually call myself Roman, although I'm happy to be associated with the See of Rome. So my point is the point that I want to make really quickly, Jay. I'm going to put it in the form of a question. Now that you advocate for Eastern Orthodoxy, which of the two patriarchates which forbid communion with each other do you submit to? The National Church of the Russians, who forbids communion and does not even mention in their liturgies the patriarchs of the Greek patriarchs. And please remember, for all those listening, that the Russian patriarchate accounts for, or I should rather say the Russian Orthodox Church accounts for more than half of all Orthodox. So this is a problem that's not seen within our rite. And the reason for that is because we are truly a Catholic Church. Now, of course, the Orthodox Church also lays claim to being Orthodox, but Jay, may I reiterate the question? Which one of the patriarchates who are at war with each other, who can just declare each other out of communion based on a whim, nothing more than a whim, and completely break up a communion, of these are you supposed to be under?
So, first of all, I'm amazed that that's what you thought was the knockdown argument, that's what you came with. I really thought you were going to bring some heat. That's what you said you're going to bring. And the irony is that really the person who asked this question is extremely ignorant of church history. And I'm not trying to say that to be rude, but you do realize that there have been many instances in the history of the church that you accept in the first 1,000 years because you believe that the shared church of the first 1,000 years is the true church. Do you realize that there have been many cases where... let me finish. No, I'm not. I'm going to lay out what my response is in a moment because you said you made multiple mistakes there. So first of all, this is not a unique situation in the history of the church. I'm going to give you examples that show that the Bishop of Rome actually doesn't solve that problem, particularly Constantinople I and Meletius. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, I am, but you are evading.
No, I'm just asking you if you're aware. I'm going to answer the objection.
I am aware, yes,
okay.
I'm very well aware.
Okay, so then in the specific question of who's right and who's wrong when patriarchates disagree, which has happened many times in the history of the church, there is no de facto. I'm answering your question, dude. There is no de facto a priori answer to that question because in our situation, I'm going to side with Moscow because I believe Moscow is in the right in this situation, and it's a nuanced answer as to why I believe Moscow is right. I can be glad to say that, but it's not the case that they do it on a whim. So you just invented this category that any patriarchate on a whim can just excommunicate all the other patriarchates. That's not what happens. It happens in a canonical synodal process by which there's steps in degrees of exercising church governance. So, for example, the stage before excommunication is the stage of removing communion, removing from the diptychs. That's common in the history of the church. That's what happens in the Canons, right? And the very fact that there's an analogy to previous instances, right, in the history of the church, shows us that there's not a de facto solution by just having the Bishop of Rome. And in fact, the Bishop of Rome himself has defected, right, and is not according to what Vatican I says he is. So I don't think you're understanding that our ecclesiology actually takes this into account. So you asked an argument about the principle of ecclesiology itself, and then you turned it on me personally. What would I do in a situation? It's arbitrary. It's not arbitrary. So
here's the problem, Jay.
Let me finish the point about Constantinople I because it's a great analogy, and then I'll let you talk.
When can I lay out the problem?
You just asked me the problem. I understand what you're saying. You're saying that without the Pope, there's not a way to solve the problem.
No, what I'm saying is, how can a patriarch who's been created by another patriarch, like we know that the Russian patriarch was created by the ecumenical patriarch, just decide to say that the ecumenical patriarch is no longer to be communed with? Where is the process here, especially if the Second Orthodox does
Because
not decide?
it's
Now, of
in
course,
canon
clearly,
law. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Preeminency. We need a preeminency that the Eastern Church is missing. This is the whole point, and you've not addressed this problem.
So you're making a pragmatic argument about what you think is the need here, right? That's different from what is in fact the case, right, in history and how the church has operated. So two different points here. So the first point is that I can give you examples where this didn't happen and the church didn't operate this way. So you said you know about Constantinople I. It's called It's called out of communion with Rome. It's a council that accurately states Trinitarian doctrine. And then by the time of Pope Vigilius, like 100 years later, 200 years later, it's affirmed as an ecumenical council. And the canons of that council include the regional and jurisdictional limitations on the Bishop of Rome, as do most of the ecumenical councils include canons that specifically limit jurisdiction and power of the Bishop of Rome. And they liken it to the other jurisdictions of the other patriarchates. So you don't even seem to be aware of the fact that the ancient canons of the church limit the jurisdiction of Rome just like the other patriarchates.
No, that's not quite correct. The First Council of Constantinople, the Third Council, and by the way, I had this prepared because I knew you would go here. So
well, good. I'm glad you know the argument. So go for it.
So now listen. The Third Canon reads that the Bishop of Constantinople shall have the prerogative of honor after the Bishop of Rome, because Constantinople is New Rome. Now, I will draw the attention of people listening to this that the argument for why I was done, please.
The argument I made. The argument I made is Canon 2. Canon 2. The argument was Canon 2, dude.
Okay. So
what does Canon 2 say?
Sorry?
I didn't make the argument that Canon 3, which talks about Constantinople as New Rome, limits. I said Canon 2. What does Canon 2 say?
I believe it imposed limitations upon patriarchs.
Exactly. Well, where is the...
What does that have to do?
What was the argument I just made? What do you mean, what does it have to do with it? You just refuted yourself out of your own mouth. It imposed limitations on patriarchates.
The Third Canon, clearly...
Canon 2! I'm not here to debate the Third Canon. Canon 2. That's what the argument is. It's on Twitter. 68 likes. Canon 2.
Okay, so you want to discuss Canon 2. That's fine.
Maybe, right? 10 times now? Canon 2.
Okay, good. Okay. All right, so let's discuss Canon 2 then, if you don't want to go to number 3.
No, so, my argument, I didn't say I want... Dude, come on. I didn't say I don't want to go to 3. You say you want to address my argument. My argument is not about Canon 3 and Constantinople.
Okay. All right, so you want to say... So let me try to summarize that.
It's not what I want to say. What does Canon 2 say?
Sorry, I can't hear you, Jay. You're cutting out. Can you repeat that?
What does Canon 2 say?
Okay, so I'm going to read the Canon 2 then.
Please.
And I hope you understand. Okay, so I believe it's the highlighted part, the Seraphim posted. Let me read it. Bishops are to stay within their own jurisdictions, lest there is confusion among the laity. Reaffirmation of the different regions and their hierarchy. Oh, sorry, this is just... I will read the canon itself, not the highlighted part. The bishops are not to go beyond their diocese to churches lying outside of their bounds, nor bring confusion on other churches, but let the Bishop of Alexandria, according to the canons, alone administer the affairs of Egypt, and let the bishops of the East manage the East alone. The privileges of the church in Antioch, which are mentioned in the canons of Nicaea, being preserved, and let the bishops of the Asian diocese administer the Asian affairs only, and the Pontic bishops only Pontic matters, and the Thracian bishops only Thracian affairs. And let not bishops go beyond their diocese for ordination or any other ecclesiastical ministrations unless they be invited. In the aforesaid canon concerning dioceses being observed, it is evident that the synod of every province will administer the affairs of that particular province as was decreed at Nicaea, but the churches of God in heathen nations must must be governed according to the custom which has prevailed from the times of the fathers. So this is from Canon 2. Now, Jay, if I understand you correctly, you want to say that this means that the Pope doesn't have universal authority, but you couldn't be more mistaken, first of all.
What canon is this referring to previously?
Don't understand what you're saying. This is canon number 2.
What canon is this canon explicitly referring to in a previous council?
Council of Nicaea.
And which canon is it referring to?
I don't know it. I don't remember.
If you knew this issue and this topic, you would automatically know that it's referring to Canon 6, which mentions the limitations of the Bishop of Rome. So you don't know what you're talking about.
So, first of all, I don't appreciate this being.
I don't care.
Okay. I can't hear you.
I'm not. What is the argument? Because you're not aware of Canon 6, which is a fundamental text in this debate. And I told you that when you come to debate, I'm going to lay it out. You want me to read Canon 6 for you of Nicaea?
Okay. All right. So, do you want me to read the Canon 6 because I have the tag Council of Nicaea open?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay. That the ancient custom in Egypt, Libya, and Pentapolis prevailed, that the Bishop of Alexandria have jurisdiction in all these, since the like is customary for the Bishop of Rome also. I believe this is what you're referring to.
No, it's not what I'm referring to. It's the previous canon that the canon you just read in Constantinople is referring to.
Okay, good. So your argument basically is that the Church of Rome has accepted these as infallible doctrines and these.
Nope. My argument is that the mindset of the canons of the church reflect the Orthodox perspective of ecclesiology, which the Chieti document admits.
I disagree with that.
Okay, I'm glad you I'm sure you disagree, but I'm telling you what the argument is. The argument is that these canons impose what is the mindset of the church at that time. I'm not interested. I know that the Pope doesn't accept a lot of these canons. I'm aware of that. I'm aware that the Pope doesn't accept Canon 28. I know all that. I'm not interested in that question. I'm interested in demonstrating that the argument that we're making is that the mindset of the church in each one of these ecumenical councils will enact canons that are totally contrary to the understanding of Vatican I. That's what I'm arguing. And thus, the first 1,000 years of Christianity do not have the Vatican I mindset. That's the argument.
Okay, good. So, two things that I'm supposed to say. First of all, it is important to understand, before we get to Vatican I, that nobody is disputing this idea that bishops have regional authority and are limited by their regional authority. Even the great Pope, Bishop of Rome, never...
Dude, I'm well aware of the claim that there's a local jurisdiction for the Bishop of Rome as well as a supreme jurisdiction. Nowhere is that mentioned. So you're just assuming that that's still there in the mindset of the church.
It is mentioned in the third canon that I was going to, but let me finish. So the point is...
It is not mentioned. No, it does not. You're being dishonest here. There is nothing in Canon 3. There is nothing in Canon 3 about supreme universal jurisdiction. Because you don't even know you don't even know what you're talking about. Constantinople I was called and had out of communion with Rome. You think that they're going to enact a canon that teaches universal supreme jurisdiction? Seriously, dude?
Well, I don't believe that the first council actually teaches the universal.
You just said Canon 3 teaches universal jurisdiction. Did you not just say that? Canon 3 of Constantinople. That's what you said. What are you talking about?
Let me finish. Canon 3 shows that the Canon 2 is not explicitly contradictory to the Vatican I doctrine. That's what I said. Now, please let me explain something, okay? Now, all right. So, first of all, we don't disagree with this idea that local bishops have power. This is why we have primates of the local church.
Dude, you're just stating arguments that nobody denies. We know that.
Good. Now, let's take a look at the third canon. This is the important one. The Bishop of Constantinople, however, shall have the prerogative of honor after the Bishop of Rome.
Prerogative of honor. Of honor.
Okay, do you respect this prerogative of honor?
Prerogative of honor.
Let me finish.
Prerogative of honor is not universal supremacy and jurisdiction. Because Canon 6 said that the traditions that Rome has are traditions, they're customs.
So, Jay,
Do we honor Rome? No, because Rome apostatized. Because any patriarch can apostatize.
But do you honor Constantinople?
Yes, they're the next in line. Yes.
You can't honor Constantinople since you've just conceded that you support the Russian Patriarch's decision.
I just explained to you how I explained to you how Orthodox canon law, when it comes to this issue, functions, and the way it functions is that the removal of diptychs, which is basic in church history, is first before the excommunication. The patriarch has not yet been excommunicated. When he's excommunicated, at that point, we do not commune with him. So yes, I side because I am under, and I believe that Russia is correct. I believe the Russian patriarch is correct. I am underneath them. And so yes, of course, I'm not going to reject them until that actually occurs. But again, the very thing that I'm arguing is what's present in these canons. This is refuting you by showing that the process of the Orthodox Church now is exactly what you're reading in these canons.
Okay, well, I just completely disagree with this because if you believe that no bishop is supposed to have authority to completely declare other bishops and other patriarchates as completely as not to be communed with. I mean, even the great...
I did not say that. You're making up arguments.
Then if you don't, then you can't agree with the Patriarchate of Russia, because what you would have to say is that the Patriarch of Russia is violating the second canon.
Dude, you're fundamentally wrong about how this operates. This operates in synods. He doesn't operate unilaterally. It operates in synods. Okay? So the governance of the church is synodical. Dude, when a patriarchate apostatizes, like Rome, obviously we're not going to honor Rome, right? Because they're outside the church. So when Constantinople steps up as the next in line, all that means is first in honor. So just the way that Canon 3 of Constantinople 1 says that New Rome is enjoying a privilege of honor, so likewise Constantinople has the privilege of honor next. Rome apostatized.
But you can't.
Yes, I can. What are you talking about? Yes, I can. That's how the church functions in these canons.
I understand that, but after you've conceded that you believe that the Patriarch of Russia can declare the other patriarchs...
He doesn't do it on his own. He does it in synod.
No, he does. The Patriarch of Russia explicitly has declared the Greek Patriarch as someone who is not to be communed with, and his churches are not to be communed with.
That's not excommunication. That's the step before excommunication.
No, I understand it's not excommunication, but you cannot make the argument that patriarchs cannot have this power, because this would refute your initial argument about the second canon and the sixth canon of Constantinople and Nicaea, respectively.
That's not what it means. It's not. It doesn't mean that they unilaterally. It means that in synod they can declare somebody. This is how the canons work.
That's what we call it in philosophy. We call it a special pleading fallacy.
It's not special pleading.
That's how we pronounce it. Now, the problem is...
It's not special pleading.
He's not willing to... It is special pleading, because you said that there was not to be that the patriarch, according to your interpretation of the second canon of the church, has absolutely no authority to interfere in the function of other patriarchs. But as it turns out, you believe that the patriarch who is lesser in honor...
No.
And you know you've been defeated, but now you're going to persist in the lie.
No. So you should know that there is an appellate structure, and that there's appeals that are made outside of jurisdictions when there are extenuating circumstances in the church, such as large-scale heresies. Hence why many patriarchates were appealed to, and some patriarchates excommunicated other patriarchates. This is talking about jurisdiction in terms of governing the church day to day when there's problems in the church. This is not talking about... Dude, this happens... You're not listening to what I'm saying.
You're part of a national church. You're not part of a Catholic church. You're part of 7 or 8 national churches, none of whom have the kind of authority to do anything. And that's why, on a whim...
That's simply not true. That's simply not true. Dude, we can turn this... I can turn this argument right back around on you, because number one... No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not tu quoque, because it's not tu quoque.
Dude, if you don't start cutting Jay off, I'm going to ban you. Knock it off.
So listen. So we're going to take this a point at a time, okay? It's not tu quoque because you are claiming to be a member of the same church of the first 1,000 years, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So it's not tu quoque because I'm saying that in the church that you accept, there's appeal to places like Alexandria. People would appeal to try to get Athanasius's help and condemnation of heretics. If you read about the situation that was going on in Antioch in Basil's letters, Basil says, I've written to the Western bishops, I've written to the Bishop of Rome, I've written to Athanasius. I'm trying to get help in solving this schism that we're having in Antioch. And he says that Rome has provided no help, and in fact, they are actually aiding heresy, and I don't care what Rome is doing. So he says, I need help. I need people to condemn the heretics in Antioch. And this is common in the history of the church where patriarchates are appealed to, and not just patriarchates. People wanted to appeal to anybody who had influence and authority to condemn heretics. So even though the decision might not be immediately binding per se, if there's a synod, it can be enacted. So it's not people acting unilaterally, and it's not forbidding all condemnations of people outside of the jurisdictions. So that's your mistake.
Okay, but that takes you to the second horn of the dilemma, because now you're then saying that the synod is above the individual people, which
it is.
Would be okay. So good, but that would be problematic for you.
No, it
because
wouldn't.
It would be, because as everyone remembers, the Orthodox Church unilaterally and unequivocally accepted the conclusions of the Council of Florence.
No, they didn't. No, so you have no idea what you're talking about. You just got refuted. You got refuted. That's a basic fact of history. Everybody knows that this guy's lying. He knows for a fact that the Orthodox Church did not unilaterally accept Florence. Total lie. Total nonsense.
Okay, so is it true that the Orthodox Patriarch proclaimed from Hagia Sophia, the Patriarchate, the lead Patriarchate?
Dude, are you aware that we don't have a problem with patriarchs apostatizing? Do you realize there have been many patriarchs who've been heretics?
Yeah, but now that's a no true Scotsman's fallacy, so that's number 3.
No, it's not. No, because your argument was premised on the fact that it was the Patriarch of Constantinople who said it, so therefore it's a problem for our ecclesiology. Our ecclesiology allows for patriarchs to apostatize.
So are you saying that the patriarchs recognized the Synod of Florence, of Ferrara Florence, apostatized? Is that your argument?
Yes, they were treated as apostates, and they didn't all accept it. That's a lie. You can read Ostromov's book on that, proving that.
Okay. So
yeah, exactly.
The problem.
So no. Now it's my turn. I want to know if you think these canons. I want to know. So you're not going to answer my questions.
No, I will answer your questions. I want to hear it. Go ahead. I will answer your question. Go ahead, ask me.
So, does Canon 6 and Canon 2 limit jurisdictions?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Was Constantinople I called out of communion with Rome?
Of course.
Okay. Was Saint Meletius, did he die out of communion with Rome, who presided at this council?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Was Saint Meletius, who presided over Constantinople I, did he die Did he die outside of communion with Rome?
He did.
Okay.
If memory serves me right.
Okay. What does Cantate Domino at Florence say about people who die outside of communion with Rome?
They are not Catholic.
Right. So you believe that an ecumenical council was called out of communion with Rome, presided over by somebody who was out of communion with Rome, and then couple centuries later, Pope Vigilius accepts this council as the teaching of the Holy Spirit as true, and also convoked by somebody who is not a saint, but now is a saint in your church.
Well, we completely recognize that these matters can get complicated. So
this is a very simple argument.
Okay, so someone who is not in communion with Rome is not a Catholic, but being in communion with Rome can be a matter of visibly being in communion with Rome, or not visibly being in communion with Rome.
What is the sense that is meant in Cantate Domino?
In Cantate Domino, I believe the sense is that someone who is not invisibly in communion with Rome.
No, what does Cantate Domino list as even the people who cannot be considered saints? There's a specific statement.
I mean, you're putting me on the spot. Do you want me to look it up?
Oh, no, wait a minute. You had your arguments ready. Yes, I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, you put me on the spot. Now I'm putting you on the spot.
Right, I'm willing to.
So you don't know. So you don't actually know, do you? Now, this is one of the most famous doctrines and dogmas and pronouncements in the history of the Roman Catholic Church. You just cited the Council of Florence. What does Florence say about people who die outside of the church?
And that's not just Florence. We believe that those who are not under jurisdiction...
I just said Florence, right. Florence has a famous statement. That's why I'm appealing to it.
Okay, I mean, I understand the gist of it, right? The idea is that they're not Catholic, those who are not in communion with the Bishop of Rome.
I asked you a specific question that it lists certain types of people who are even excluded.
I don't remember it from the top of my
Okay.
head.
So it mentions martyrs. It mentions people that die for the name of Christ, suffer for the name of Christ. If they die outside of communion with the Roman bishop, they cannot be saints, and they are not saved. It explicitly mentions martyrs even.
Okay, I would have to look at that. Can somebody...
Yeah, right, I'm sure.
link
So,
that?
yeah, we'd be glad to link it. It's Cantate Domino, Denzinger, and it notes that, I think it's, I put it on Twitter in this thread here, it's 7:14. It's about 7:14. Let me pull it up.
Okay,
So I'm gonna read it to you. I'm gonna read it to you. It says, this is Denzinger 7:14, and it says,
Yeah, I've read Denzinger.
well, you said you read Denzinger, but when you came in here and I asked you what it was, you didn't know what it was. So I'm not sure that you actually have. But you didn't apparently know about one of the most famous dogmatic pronouncements, which says that no one can attain to everlasting life. Those not living within the Catholic Church, not only pagans, but also Jews and heretics and schismatics, cannot become participants in eternal life, but will depart into the everlasting fire, which was prepared for the devil and his angels, Matthew 25:41, unless before the end of his life, he has been added to the flock and to the unity of the ecclesiastical body, not the invisible church, the ecclesiastical body. And it is so strong that only to those remaining in it are the sacraments of the church of benefit for salvation, and to do fasting, almsgiving, and other functions of piety and exercise of Christian service to produce an eternal reward, that no one, whatever almsgiving he has practiced, even if he has shed blood for the name of Christ, can be saved unless he has remained in the bosom and unity of the Catholic Church. So how is St. Meletius of Antioch, who dies out of communion with Rome, who calls a council out of communion with Rome, which enacts canons that obviously don't teach papal infallibility, how is he a saint, and how is that a true council?
Okay, good. So notice the problem here that I've explained before. There isn't anything in the statement of Cantate Domino that excludes the possibility of a mystical, invisible...
It says the ecclesiastical body. You're lying. You're making up stuff, because it specifically says that you can't be a saint dying outside of communion with Rome. So you're lying.
Okay, but...
It says joined to the... Do you think the ecclesiastical body is an invisible church? Now you're a Protestant heretic.
No, I don't agree with that. What I'm saying is, someone can be in communion with the ecclesiastical body without visibly being in communion.
No, they can't. That's a heresy. You're a heretic. This document is talking about being in communion with the ecclesiastical body. This is an entire council called out of communion with Rome, in schism with Rome. So you're just engaging in sophistry.
Okay, I'm simply here to give Catholic teaching on the matter, on the ability for someone to be saved who is not visibly inside the Roman Catholic Church.
Okay, yeah, I know that your church later says that over time, talking about invincible ignorance, but this is explicitly forbidding that for someone who is a martyr or dies outside of communion with the Bishop of Rome, particularly clerics. So you want to say that you can have invincible ignorance and salvation outside the visible confines, but that begs the question, because I don't think that the Roman Catholic doctrine of that is consistent with what is taught here in Cantate Domino. So I know you think that that's true, but this explicitly mentions being joined to the ecclesiastical body of the church, not the invisible body of the church. By the way, if you read Mystici Corporis, there is no invisible body that people are joined to that is distinct from the ecclesiastical body. Mystici Corporis specifically identifies the mystical body with the visible church. Or are you a Protestant?
Okay, well, Jay, I don't. No, I'm not a Protestant. Jay, I don't mean to be rude, but your lack of imagination is not an argument, right? So the argument that's being made here is that the Roman Catholic
That wasn't a lack of imagination. The argument is that this says the ecclesiastical body, and you appeal to a spiritual invisible union to an invisible church.
No, I'm saying that someone can be visibly not a Catholic, but be in communion with Rome through invincible ignorance.
No. The fact that the Roman Church later says that, the fact that the Roman Church later says that is not consistent with what Cantate Domino says.
Well, not just Cantate Domino, but Unum Sanctum specifically says that you have to submit to the Pope to be saved.
Yeah.
There's no getting around that.
Yeah, Unum Sanctum says if you do not submit to the Roman bishop, you cannot be saved.
I agree with that. You have to submit to the Bishop of Rome to be saved. That's the normative way. But that doesn't mean that there aren't other ways of salvation that are not normative.
Yeah, actually it does, right? And I mean, so again, there can't be saints outside of the Roman Catholic Church, right? How if we need to, do you admit, so was Constantinople one, was it true before it was approved by Rome 200 years later?
It was ontologically an ecumenical council.
So we don't need the Pope for ecumenical councils. You just admitted that. Thank you. You just admitted we don't need the Pope for ecumenical councils. Thank you. Okay, we're done. We're done. You just admitted that we don't need the Pope for an ecumenical council. Thank you.
All I admitted is that in the past there have been ecumenical councils where the papal consent was not always given.
No, this was not merely papal assent not given. This was called out of communion with Rome. The guy who presided was out of communion with Rome. And you just admitted that an ecumenical council can exist as true without Rome.
Yes, that's correct.
Oh, thank you. So we don't need the Pope. Thank you. We don't need the Pope for ecumenical council. You just refuted yourself.
That's a non sequitur.
You just admitted that we don't need the Pope for ecumenical councils.
I admitted that there can be an ecumenical council without the Bishop of Rome.
Thank you. That's an admission. So now you're a sophist and you're full of shit. Yeah, that's total bullshit, dude. How is that a non sequitur? It's what you admitted.
Necessary, well, not always.
Okay, so this is sophistry. This is why you're a sophist. You just admitted that we can have an ecumenical council without the Bishop of Rome, and it can be true, and we can know it without the Bishop of Rome. You just admitted that. Now you're engaging in the sophistry.
Okay, I admit that there can be a council that can be true without the consent of the Bishop
Thank
of
you.
Rome.
And you said it was an ecumenical council. You admitted an ecumenical council. You just refuted yourself.
Correct.
You just refuted yourself.
That's correct.
It's correct that you refuted yourself. Yes, correct. So thank you for conceding that you refuted yourself. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks for the engagement, Jay, and I hope I wasn't too rude.
Mm-hmm.